so that was a thing. Hi, my name is Mark. So for those who don't follow my channel, I usually do guitar lessons and stuff like that. And recently, Tom Quayle came to Portugal to do a clinic, and he also did some like one-on-one lessons. And because I had talked to Tom before a couple of years ago, and I had actually made a video about him before, which is about practicing and how like maybe practicing like John Petrucci or maybe practicing like Guthrie Govan isn't the exact thing that maybe you should focus on, or like you can go watch that video if you want to. I'll leave it in the card section. So I thought it might be interesting to get a hold of Tom again, talk to him a little bit, film our conversation, and share it with you guys, because again, not only did we talk about some things that I think you might be interested in, and again, I'd like to share this with you guys, but also in that video I made a couple of years ago about Tom, I actually got some interesting comments saying, oh, Tom would definitely never say that, oh, that's completely rubbish, that's not really what's happening. So I thought I'd get Tom's opinion on that as well, and yeah, we basically talk guitar, music theory, improvising, soloing, stuff like that. So yeah, I won't really stretch this for much longer. Again, I want to thank Tom for being such a beast and allowing me to film everything. I kinda became a little girl when I entered the room where he was at, because I was thinking, well, he probably won't really remember me. He meets a lot of guitar players all the time, so it's not really like he's going to remember everyone. But I entered the room and he was like, oh, I remember you. We talked about some music things a couple of years ago, and I actually saw your video, and wherever somebody sent it to me, and I was like, no. So yeah, that was the thing. I also want to thank the guys that organized this whole event thingy. They're called Virtuosos da Guitarra, which in Portuguese is basically like guitar virtuosos. I thought that maybe they wouldn't really like me filming my session with Tom, but they were completely cool about it, and they're really nice guys, so yeah, props to them as well. And yeah, without much further ado, here's my talk with Tom Quayle. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, I highly suggest you subscribe, turn on all notifications, and follow me on social media. Only if you do that sort of stuff can I keep doing these sorts of videos. So, here's the thing. Everybody has to know your legato stuff, right? And of course, your legato stuff is awesome, and you gotta talk about that all the time. Like, later on, you'll definitely gonna get questions about your legato stuff. And you're probably gonna get questions about improvising and like, oh, what should I play over this chord progression, whatever this chord progression. And like, if you have like a dominant 7th chord, we know that, oh, there's tons of stuff we can play over dominant 7th chord. But here's what I'm interested in. It's like, what does Tom Quayle feel like to play when playing over dominant 7th chord, for instance? Because you can play, oh, I can play like a mixed lead and stuff, I can maybe play some altered dominant stuff. There are so many things you can play. What does Tom Quayle gravitate towards to?
Okay, so it depends on, like in music, context is everything.
Yes.
So it depends whether you're talking about, is it like a static vamp? So are you... If it's that kind of a thing, even that is not quite enough information to definitively say, I'm going to play this.
Yes.
There has to be... I actually have a lesson on my website, and I'm not telling you this so that everyone should try and buy the lesson. There is relevance to this. It almost does this like a flow chart.
Yes.
Does that, you know, a flow chart?
Yeah.
So what you've got to do is you've got to eventually subconsciously, but at first very consciously, ask yourself a series of questions as to what is the context harmonically and musically of, and also from a genre perspective of what I'm doing here. So let's take that G7 that we had there, for instance, and let's start with a static vamp. So a static vamp, for anyone who's not sure, is just a single chord. Okay, so it's really common, you'll go to a jam session, nobody knows what to play, and it'll be like, all right guys, let's just play over a G7 for half an hour, and all the guitar players shred for like, 25 minutes.
Obviously.
The sax player plays a really tasty solo. In that environment, let's say we're just literally playing the 1, the 3, and the flat 7. So the flat 7 is the dominant 7. Yeah, exactly. So we've got that kind of, you're doing that kind of shuffle feel. In that instance, because if we sort of go down our flowchart, what we can do is we can tick a few boxes already. We can say, okay, there's a single chord, there's no harmonic context, we're not going anywhere, and we've got very little harmonic information. So at that point, our options are enormous. So in our flowchart, we can say, all right, if I'm going to play over this, my first instinct is, this is a Mixolydian chord.
Yeah.
Okay, so the way I describe harmony is I'll describe a chord in terms of playing over it by which scale I would pick to play over it. So when I say a Mixolydian chord, what that means is, and you probably know this already, if I have a G7 with a root, I've got the root, and so have you, the flat 7 and the 3rd.
Yeah.
That's right, I'm way louder than you.
No,
it's my ego kicking in.
You're supposed to be louder, you play that.
If I've got this context, when I say a Mixolydian chord, what I'm in my mind is I'm saying any of the notes from the Mixolydian scale are available for me to A, add to the chord as chord voicings, and also to play in the context of my improvisation. So for Mixolydian, for instance, we've got a 1, a natural 2, a major third, obviously that's part of the chord. We have the 4 or 11, which actually against your chord sounds pretty crap. But there's good reason for that. We've got the 5, the 6 or 13, the flat 7, and back to the 1. All stuff you already know, probably. Yeah. So any of those things are good for adding into the chord in this context. So what I'm doing here is I'm laying down a harmonic palette. So in my head, a little flag goes up and goes, okay, you as the chordal player, you're only playing 1, 3, and flat 7.
Yeah.
So this is my first port of call, it's my first option, Mixolydian. So if you play any of this stuff is going to be good in terms of me comping. If you turn yourself up a little bit, and then just do that comping for me. Perfect. There's nothing to stop me playing. All this stuff is Mixolydian.
Yeah.
So and what I'm doing when I do that is I'm laying down, as I say, a harmonic palette where I'm saying I'm stating Mixolydian. And if I state that in my comping or my chordal playing, whatever I do there, I can do in my single note playing as well. So if I'm going to state that in my single note playing, if you comp again, I'll turn it down a little bit.
I can turn it
So if you've got that. All Mixolydian, very simple.
Yeah.
But because there's very little harmonic information there, at any point, literally at my choosing, I can say, okay, I'm bored with that, I want to veer into something different.
Yeah, I was asking it because, like in this case, like you mentioned before, it's a very simple sort of a thing, just a G7, you can opt for loads of stuff. Is the Mixolydian thing the thing that you gravitate towards to, like, of course it depends on the musical context, like you say, but if I just say, oh, G7, do you gravitate towards Mixolydian like instantly, or do you think like, oh, maybe you feel like oh, Lydian dominant is the sort of sound that I imagine with, because like, for instance for me, when I think of a minor chord, I'm pretty weird, I don't think about like a Aeolian scale or something like it, I think about maybe the Hungarian minor, for instance, I really like that sound,
Right.
So I can't really think, of course it depends on the musical context, but if somebody just gives me like a minor chord, I instantly go for that sort of a sound.
That's really interesting that you do that. So there is a thing, there's a secondary consideration here in music, especially when you're playing with other people, which is musical etiquette.
Yeah.
Because there are defined scenarios that we've all agreed on, not all of us. You've obviously not agreed. You agreed amongst yourself that you should play Hungarian minor scale, which is super cool. There's nothing, this is the thing, with music when you've got very little harmonic information, i.e. the bare bones of, like, what you require there is you require a minor triad.
Yeah.
So long as you've got that minor triad, you can make that decision. But your decision does also affect the other musicians around you.
Yeah.
Now, admittedly, they should be listening to you, and they should be reacting to what you're doing. But if you turn up at a jam session, and this is worth considering, if you turn up at a jam session and you say, okay, well, let's play over a minor chord, and you didn't tell me in the initial instance, before we started playing, that you were going to play Hungarian minor.
Yeah, you're probably.
When I heard you do that, there is an instant flag goes up in my mind, which is like, oh, that's a bit, not rude is not the right word by any stretch of the imagination, but it's very unusual.
Yeah.
Like in the context of just jamming with other musicians, I mean, you will know this already.
Yeah.
But if I saw a minor triad or a minor chord and it was a static vamp again,
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think I would think?
Probably minor 7 sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Well,
So harmonically, scale wise, do you know what I would?
Probably like some Dorian stuff.
Yeah, because.
Yeah. And I completely understand what you're saying. I was just asking because of that sort of thing. Like, of course, like if I'm just jamming with somebody, like if I was jamming with you over some sort of D minor thing, the most appropriate thing would be that sort of Dorian stuff.
Yeah.
But like, because we all have like that different sort of ear, the sort of sound we go towards to, and that's why I was asking that first question. Like, does Tom Quayle go for an unusual sound that we all don't think about? Like that was my sort of question.
Well, I guess the answer to that question is that I, in a way, I'm a harmonic conformist. So I don't try and, for the sake of, I want to musically get on with everybody.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be slightly concerned about your motive, not yours, just generally.
Yeah.
This is not aimed at you. Just generically aimed at people. You have to be slightly concerned about your motive if your motive is to do something weird or impressive harmonically. So to purposefully do something outside of the conventions of musical normality for the sake of doing it because it's outside the conventions. So everything we've talked about so far, apart from the exists within the conventions of the agreed kind of parameters of improvising music. So if we go back to your G7 example, the very first thing that would enter my mind would be Mixolydian, but at exactly the same point, Lydian dominant would enter my mind.
Yeah.
Here's a key thing though, they wouldn't enter my mind as separate scales, like I'm going to play Mixolydian, then I'll do some, and then a different flag goes up, it's Lydian dominant. What's actually happening in my mind is an awareness of the fourth degree and its relationship to the chord.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've ever come across this concept before, I'm sure you probably have. If you have a chord, any chord, so we'll take G7 in this case, within the scale that you're going to play over the chord, some of those scale tones, or the extensions, let's say, not the chord tones, some of the extensions will be a semitone below or above a chord tone.
Yes.
Okay. So in this instance, it's the ones that are above a chord tone by a semitone that you need to be careful with, really careful with. So in the case of G7, if I play Mixolydian, can you play the fourth degree? Play on the G string.
Okay.
We kind of did that earlier when I played G. Now, funnily enough, when you play it in the context of a chord, we like that dissonance.
Yeah.
We didn't used to, but now we do. Because this is the worst dissonance you can play in music is either a flat 2 or a flat 9.
Yeah.
So that's pretty nasty. If you do it like this kind of flat 9 interval is horrible. So in the context of this G7, it would be this.
Yeah.
The third degree and the fourth degree. So because that C, the fourth degree of the scale, is a semitone above a chord tone, in jazz terms, we class it as an avoid note. Okay. So in Mixolydian, there is one avoid note, which is the fourth degree of the scale.
Yeah.
Now, of course, jazz musicians, when they teach, will say to you, "Oh, there's this other scale that you can play, which is Lydian dominant, and that has a sharp. It's a Mixolydian scale with a sharpened fourth, which is fine, and you can look at it as a different scale. That's no problem at all. I do that as well. But what's kind of more useful is to be aware of just making a decision, making a more in-depth decision about, okay, if I'm playing over a G7 chord, do I want to exploit the natural 4, or do I want to exploit the sharp 4, which is a non-avoid note?
Yeah.
So do I purposefully want to create dissonance using this 4? And there might be very specific reasons for doing that, or even create a specific sound. So, like, if I'm comping, if I've got... Maybe I do that Larry Carlton thing, where Larry Carlton, whenever he plays a blues, it's always like... It's almost like an LA-style shuffle, where you've got the suspended fourth. So in that case, there's more harmonic information, and now my brain has to play Mixolydian. Virtuosos, again, you know this. But maybe I choose to exploit, instead of the fourth, as opposed to thinking, now I'm playing Lydian dominant, I might just choose to target the sharp 4, which, by the way, I'm pointing here, it's not there, obviously, because I'm choosing it. But then we get this. Exactly. And again, there's musical context to all of this, because maybe it can be quite dangerous to think in terms of scales all the time. Because even if you're a player who has moved past the stage where you just play scales up and down because you learn a new scale, so your improvisation over this becomes... even if you're at that stage, it's still really useful to think about individual small changes you can make in the harmony without thinking about scale. So maybe this, it's very dissonant, but maybe you're just hearing this as a passing tone moving to the fifth. So, so maybe you've got that might be your groove. Now at that point, because that sharp fourth's come in there, I have to, again, always think about context. I'm not thinking Lydian dominant, because the overriding context is this. But then out of the blue, that might be our groove. And we've got that sharp four in there. Being aware of that kind of idea makes you a little bit more open to the idea that, okay, well, I can think about the chord tones of G7, then I can add in subtle additions to my harmonic choices that aren't based around thinking a scale. They're just based around thinking tension and resolution. So as I'm improvising, if you give me that G7 again, maybe I'll start out with very mixed Lydian. And the context there was, I don't think you could really say I was playing Lydian dominant at any point. I was playing Mixolydian, but I exploited the tension and resolution nature of sharp 4 leading into the 5. So I was thinking in a different way. So this is a very long-winded answer to your question, but I tend to not think so much about which scale am I playing at any given time. I base my improvisation around the G7 chord tones, and primarily I'm utilising Mixolydian, but I will step outside for brief moments in order to pick particular tensions against the chord, and then move back in again. But when I do it, I'm not playing a shape, I'm not playing like...
You're looking for a specific flavour sort of a thing.
Yeah, so I'm picking a particular note against... Because the way I visualise everything, I think you've probably come across this, is I visualise everything against the root note of the chord as an interval. I don't tend to visualise... I do see these big... You have to play the legato thing. But I visualise very specifically in very small areas of the fretboard. So if I'm improvising here, I can see the sharp 4 here, but I'm not seeing it as part of a Lydian dominant. I'm just seeing it as part of a resolving structure around this 5, maybe. So again, this. Now that's a piece of vocabulary then. It's not just an isolated scale shape. It's actually a piece of vocabulary. Another piece might be this triad here. So if you just give me a long sustaining G7. Sorry. That piece of vocabulary that specifically outlines the sharp 4, 6, and the 9. So all the extensions from Lydian dominant. But I'm not thinking a big scale shape. And if you can improvise that way, you have more detail in your playing. Like if you've ever heard, you heard the guitar solo from Kid Charlemagne? And it's ridiculous and all the hairs go up on the back of your neck. I wish I could play like that. And it was improvised, you know, there's a lot of stuff these days, this is me going on a rant, that is said to be improvised and just, it's bullshit, it's not improvised at all. You know, somebody that's evidently spent a long time writing this stuff out and learning it, but then they write that it's improvised on Instagram or whatever. It's sort of the equivalent of all of these, you know, people who have those energy drinks and they've got like the most amazing body, and then if you see the picture before Photoshop, it's like, okay, that's what you look like in real life. When you listen to Larry Carlton play with Kid Charlemagne, every single note that he plays is ridiculous in terms of its choice and where it's placed in the bar. And I very much doubt that Larry Carlton ever thinks scales apart from maybe pentatonic box shapes. He's much more targeting chord tones. Chord tones and extensions. And I don't want to give you the impression that I never think scales, because I do all the time.
No. That's the thing. Like I mentioned before, you have this cool way of looking at the fretboard for the whole visualization thing, and I think that it's kind of like you said before. We usually go for the scale sort of things, and then somebody says, "Oh, scale, that sucks. Go for the case system or whatever." And then somebody says, no, the cage system sucks. Go back to the scales or whatever. And then by combining those sorts of two things, start to analyze, okay, maybe this sort of thing, probably it's a cage sort of system, but this overall is like a major chord. This is a major chord, this is a major chord, all that sort of thing. We start to visualize that sort of stuff. So, like if I, this is a little bit weird, but okay. Getting back to the note choicing again. Like if I play with G7, of course it depends on whatever you're doing, but right now, for the sake of it, if I play with G7 chord, what notes is Tom Quayle going to target? What does he feel like target right now?
Okay, well if you want something slightly more interesting.
No, just whatever you feel like right now. If you feel like
whatever I feel like right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like doing this because again, this is really interesting. This is context based. You've put my mind in this space now.
Yeah.
And because harmonically I can do whatever I like, I'm feeling this. So if you play me the chord. That's what my brain and ears are wanting me to play. Now, again, that would be outside of the norm. I'll explain what it is in a second. But it would be outside of the norm of I wouldn't do that first thing in a jam. Or maybe I would. Like I've seen Oz Noy play before, and Oz is he just plays the weirdest shit because that's Oz and he wants to do that initially. So here, I'm actually targeting all the altered notes. Mm-hmm. So, an altered dominant?
Yeah.
So I'm implying a harmonic context which isn't there. So exactly, so you're playing a sharp 5 on the top, right?
Yeah.
So you've got, again, it's slightly different. I'm going to move away so I promise I'm playing the same shape as Mark. Within the context of an altered dominant, obviously you've got a flat 5, a sharp 5, a flat 9 and a sharp 9.
Yeah.
Are you self-taught on this stuff or have you had classes on this?
Well, internet classes, let's say.
Yeah, that's cool.
YouTube stuff.
Yeah, right. So, one of the interesting things that you can do is a completely different approach, and I like this approach, of organising these things into very interesting shapes. Mm-hmm. Okay, because the guitar is a very shape-based instrument, so you might as well exploit that. So, I'm going to take. I wonder if you can identify this. This is not a test. I just wonder if you can.
No.
If you play A flat, D flat, and then on the top E flat. So it's like, right, first of all, that is a super cool sound on guitar. If anybody who's watching is into Kurt Rosenwinkel or Tim Miller or Adam Rogers or any of those New York jazz guys, this kind of a sound is a really interesting. It's like you've got the fifth on the bottom or fourth, an inverted fifth, and then obviously you've got this slightly more dissonant major second on the top. What kind of? If you look at this as being the root note, what kind of chord is that? Identify that?
Oh, that's interesting, because I wasn't looking at the chord.
You were looking at it from G.
Yeah, I was looking at it as like a C sharp sort of thing, so I was thinking like C sharp sus2.
Yeah, so a C sharp sus2, if you use A flat as the root, is an A flat sus4.
Yeah.
Okay, so sus2s and sus4s
are
versions of each other. So this shape here, which is a sus4 shape, if you do this, if you move it up a tone, and then up a fourth. So now, when you go up another, unfortunately for you, your shapes are going to change. I'm sure. Now you have to change it a little bit more because of it becomes. This is where, again, this is not what we're talking about. This tuning is really useful and quite cheat in a way because you can just do that. But effectively what we're doing is we're playing A flat sus4, B flat sus4, and E flat sus4. Now, I'm not thinking a scale here at all, I'm just thinking those shapes. But if you play those and you analyse them against the G root note, okay now, so as opposed to thinking from the root note of the actual chord, if we look at it from this G, what we actually end up, well you tell me, what do we end up with? With the A flat sus4, how does this relate to the G root note? So the A flat would be...
it's a flat 9.
Yeah, and then the D flat here would be...
Sharp 4.
Yeah, or flat 5 in the case of an altered. And then...
The minor 6.
Yeah, again I would relabel that to sharp 5. Exactly.
Yeah.
So here we've got flat 9, flat 5, sharp 5. If you move it up a tone, so now you've got B flat, E flat, and F.
Yeah.
This would be the sharp 9.
Yeah.
Then we'd have the sharp 5 again, and then we'd we've got the flat 7.
Yeah.
So we've described very nicely here an altered dominant chord. We've described a few things. You could argue this is a Locrian sound as well, but because I've got no third there at the moment. Now if you move this up to here, let me do this again. So we've got A flat, that's it. If you analyse that in relation to the altered dominant.
Well, yeah, it's that same sort of a thing. Sharp 9, slide 9.
Exactly.
Sharp 9.
So organising things in this way, if you play the G7 again, gives you some very, very interesting sounds. Now, the cool thing is, if you organise stuff in this way as opposed to a big scale shape, because we could just play, if you play the chord one more time.
It doesn't sound the same.
You're not taking the information and playing anything that has any kind of musical clarity to it, or musical again, context, all about context. So here we've arranged things in such a way that there's logic to it. Unfortunately, for someone who plays legato, this is a horrendous thing to play because you have to pick everything, because there's only one note per string, but still. I'll show you another way to do it in a second, which is quite cool. So here, when I get to the top, again, it looks slightly differently. I'm just ending on the sharp 5, basically. So from an improvisational context, like if I loop this G7 note so you don't have to bring my backing notes. Well, I'm terrible with a looper, so I'll do my best here. Let's just do this. From a comping perspective, this is actually quite cool, because if it's very weird sound. You probably know quite a few altered dominant chord voices, like the G7 sharp 5, maybe like a sharp 9 as well. Yeah, exactly. They sound very different to this.
Yeah.
Highly different. So you can get a completely different musical context by arranging things in a different way like this. From an improvisational perspective, if you practice making lines out of this stuff as well, so a line that might be quite cool to play based around the same material will be this. So yeah, if you play me the chord. Ears, if we just resolve this to a C major 7, I know we're not doing that in this context, but just so that people don't freak out. So if I get to the top of the line, then I'll tell you when to resolve to C major. So that would be a proper context for that. But in the context of just a G7 vamp, if you've got terrible time feel, maybe you're you can totally switch gears like that harmonically, provided, again, you don't start, well, I wouldn't start that way, but get there eventually.
Musical context matters. Okay, so I have another question. So of course, Tom Quayle, the legend. What are you into right now? What sort of stuff? I wouldn't necessarily say like, oh, I get home, I'm practicing this because this is what I'm feeling right now. But what sort of stuff are you into right now? If nothing at all, you can
VR racing.
Okay.
I'm joking. I'm into that. Okay, this is a hard question to answer right now, although I will try and answer it, because I have a 3-year-old daughter.
Yeah, and
the reality of that situation is I actually haven't been able to practice properly for 3 years. Things should improve soon because she's getting older and she'll go to school soon. But in terms of,
or even not necessarily just guitar stuff, like music stuff, like if you're like composing stuff, like think, oh, I'm thinking about this sort of thing, I think it can work well, or something like it, like some musical stuff that you're into right now.
Yeah, I would love to. What I would like to get better at is reharmonization on the fly, you know,
Yeah.
being able to improvise that stuff, which at the moment I can't do. It's a very hard thing to practice and get good at, because on the piano, when you do it, you have 10 digits to play with, and you can arrange the harmony in lots of different ways. The guitar is a very weird puzzle.
Yeah.
Because one of the ways that you can practice, I don't know if you've ever practiced this stuff.
I mean, it depends, like, again, because I like that sort of Hungarian minor sound.
That's a theme for you, isn't it?
No, it's more like that sort of thing, like, I don't know, many times, like, we go for that sort of harmonic minor resolution of going for like a 5 major to 1 minor sort of a thing. Many times when I'm composing, and I'm not necessarily hearing that A major to D minor, I'm listening for that resolution of C sharp to D. So I started to think, okay, chords C sharp to D, and for instance, I wouldn't necessarily say like a quicker way that I think about it, but one of the more instinct-based things is not to go necessarily for the A major, but to go for like a B flat minor to a D minor, and it's sort of that metal thing.
Yeah, so you're looking for ways you're staying within the harmony of that particular scale, but you're looking for other ways of creating the resolution.
Yeah, that sort of a thing. Like I listen to some sort of a sound, and I think I'm audiating this sort of a thing, like, well, what is that exactly? Maybe it's a little dominant thing, maybe it's more like an altered thing. Most of the times it ends up being that Hungarian minor sound. I don't know why I gravitate towards
it's a great sound. It's not a sound that I use at all. For me, I'm thinking more in terms of, like, eventually would end up practicing 2 things. So the first is a concept called backcycling, which I don't know if you've come across. You know backcycling?
Not necessarily by that term.
Yeah, so obviously the strongest thing you can do in music from a chordal perspective is go around the cycle of fifths or cycle of fourths. And if you have a melody, let's say we have a really simple melody, so the simplest melody ever, we just have this. It's not even a melody, but it'll do for now. Okay, so if you've got just the C major scale, you can actually start from any point within the circle of fifths.
Yeah.
So if we just pick an arbitrary root note, so if we have, for instance, E would be the root note that we're going to start on. One of the things you can practice is, if you think about the cycle of fifths, if we go back through the cycle of fifths, so we start on E, then we go down to A, then D, then G, C, F, E flat, so on and so forth. If you find a way to be able to harmonise each of these notes against those given root notes, what you're guaranteed is that you will have a strong sounding progression, because the root movement is moving through the cycle of fifths. The hard bit is to be able to harmonise each of those notes quickly, and also remember your way through. Not the cycle of fifths is very straightforward to remember.
No, but it's like you said, doing it on the spot,
on the fly,
that's
in the middle of, wherever you are on the guitar at the time. The other thing is, the guitar is a puzzle for this, because if I have this C here and this E here, okay, well, there's only so many things I can do, because it's not like on a piano where I can grab anything I want, because my hand is spread out over the keyboard in such a way. I'm kind of limited, because these 2 notes they're only sort of 2 strings apart, 1 string apart, if you like. So I'm quite limited. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to play an E augmented triad. The next note would be the note D, that's the next note in our C major scale, and my root note's going to go to A. Okay, so that's the 4th degree of A. So again, I'm fairly limited, because there aren't that many chords that I can play across this part of the guitar where there's the 4th degree is the melody note. So I'm going to do this, I'm going to go. We then get the note E, and D is our root note, so I can play. And if we continue through this kind of progression, so the next note will be A, and our root note will be C. So I'm going to play. Okay, and then we get to. Now here we've got an interesting thing, because again, like harmonically, here's my F. So I'm actually going to play this. Okay, It starts to get a little bit like it's just a massive puzzle. And then if you bring, I don't know, did that make sense?
No, definitely.
Then if you bring tritone substitutions into play, so your root notes, instead of going, down in semitones, again you get more interesting kind of options. So here, now I've got a killer one because my melody and my root note are the same.
Yeah.
So how do I make this interesting? It's kind of tricky, so you end up doing, which kind of sucks.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound that great. Well, I should do tritone, so. Oh, what did I do there? I did a semitone, so where are we? So you have to think really hard about this now. I don't want to have to think this hard. Where are we now? Oh no, sorry. I don't want to have to think that hard when I do this. I just be able to.
Yeah.
And it takes years and years and years of practice. There's a few guys, the really amazing jazz guys from New York who do this just on the fly.
Yeah.
But my brain isn't fast enough to do this yet.
No, but it's cool to see that you struggle as well. It's like bending out and stuff like that.
There's loads of stuff I struggle with, absolutely, all the time.
Okay, so since you did watch my video again, I don't expect you to remember anything about it, and it was poorly made and whatever. But I want to get your thoughts on that whole practicing thing that we talked about before. So basically, like a context thing. We were talking about that ultimate practice routine, like Steve Morse, John Petrucci, go practice all you want, and then that sort of more like hippie approach of like Guthrie Govan sort of thing, like if you just hear the music in your head and you'll get around to it.
I remember that conversation now.
Yeah, and well, basically we came to the conclusion that's like, well, sure, Guthrie's way work, but it's not like you have all the time in the world to go do that sort of practice thing, because you need to be playing a lot, but you need to be thinking a lot, and like, even if we're all Guthrie Govan on the inside and he's nothing special, he's like 40-something years old, 50-something years old, and what you basically said, even if Guthrie doesn't really do anything special, we can all do like him, well, he's got much more years of experience than we do, so that takes a little bit of part on it as well. So we gotta apply the practicing thing as well. So like, okay, what do I need to practice over? What do I need to do? What do I need to study a little bit? And I actually got quite a lot of comments on that video saying, yeah, this guy knows nothing about Tom Quayle. They didn't talk about Tom Quayle. Tom Quayle would never say something like it. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll just ignore those comments. But then I was like, okay, but why wouldn't people say that? Why wouldn't people believe that Tom Quayle says, well, yeah, Guthrie's way of work, but you gotta practice as well? I actually thought it was quite interesting, because I was like, yeah, Tom and Martin would never say that you need to practice, that Guthrie doesn't practice and whatever. I was like, okay, that's a little bit weird. So getting to the question itself, nowadays of course you don't really have that much time to practice, of course, and you're into this harmonizing thing as well. But if you said to yourself, okay, there's something I do already, and there's something that I'm kind of comfortable with, but I want to take it to the next level. What would it be, and how would you approach it?
Oh, it'd be time feel every time.
Like a sort of market theory thing.
Yes, yeah. So that would be a good example. So I've sat and jammed with Mark quite a few times, and Mark is one of those guys that he could sit with, somebody who's relatively a beginner, and the jam would sound great because Mark holds the time down so well. And time. So if we go back to I'll just take a slightly roundabout route to get to the answer. So
sure.
If we go back to the Guthrie example, there are some things that I think in music that genetics is the only, or not only, but one of genetics and environment, but genetics is a key factor, and one of those things is your ears.
Yeah.
So I think there is a hard cap, and I could be wrong about this, and I hope I am, but I don't think I am. There is a hard cap on how good you can get your ears to be. So I don't believe the idea that you can train yourself to have perfect pitch or even incredible relative pitch. I think genetically there is a hard cap, just in the same way that you can study and study and study, but your hard capped intelligence level will stop you from ever being Stephen Hawking or Einstein or whatever. It doesn't matter how much quantum physics you study, if you don't have the raw intelligence to understand it or to take it in, you can't. So I believe the same, I hope this isn't too depressing, but I believe the same cap applies for your oral abilities, your ability to just hear something and immediately understand it and say what it is and react to it. Now you can obviously work on that stuff.
Yeah.
However, I don't believe that's the case with time feel. I think you can take your time feel, and if you work on it in a very diligent way, you can get really, really great time. Because your time feel, for me, is as much tied up in your technique. Most people's time feel is a problem with their technique. It's not with their ability to, if you sit someone down, provided they've played music for a reasonable amount of time, very few people would not be able to tap out a beat in time with music. I have taught people that just can't do it.
Yeah, me as well.
And you're onto I don't really know what you do at that point.
Yeah.
But most people can do that. Where the next level comes in is then being able to perceive time in a more kind of detailed way. So being able to actually create a groove, by yourself. Yeah. And that's what Mark is incredible at. Now I have pretty reasonable time feel, but to get it to that level that Mark's at, I think really the way you do it is you play with incredible musicians who already have amazing time feel. Yeah. It's no good, one of my favourite things to do is to, I use this program Stylus RMX, which is made by a company called Spectrasonics. And I love it because it's got loads of drum grooves built in. So we've got like, oh, it turned off. I was warned about this. So I like these kind of grooves to play over because they've got lots of rhythmic information. Yeah. And it's one thing to be able to sit if I grab a little bit of kind of overdrive. One of the things I'll practice a lot is just kind of playing with these drum grooves. Let me turn that on the camera. It's one thing to be able to play with a drum groove like that. Yeah. Mark can play without the drum groove, no source of external time, and groove like an absolute.
Be crazy.
Without that.
Too crazy.
And so you need to have that whole thing totally internalized so that you can groove away without that there. And that's something, like I used to work on it a lot more, and now because I don't practice so much, I don't really get much chance to work on it. But having that internal, I hope that doesn't screw your camera, internal metronome. And it's, for me, it's sort of tight for a lot of the time, and then it's a slightly drift, and then come back in again, and then it's a slightly drift. Yeah. And what I want to work on is my ability to have that locked down, 100% solid, grooving all the time. I mean, I don't do the funk thing that Mark does, he grooves with actually a groove. Yeah. I'm talking more like, do you know Wayne Krantz?
Yeah.
It's that kind of Wayne Krantz, single line kind of stuff that I like to play. One day, maybe I'll get more time to practice it again. When I was younger, I used to practice it all the time, but these days not so much. But I do think that you can develop that to a very high level, whereas your oral skill, so far, you can develop it to a certain point, but I think you can hit a brick wall with it.
Okay, so this was really fun. Again, I really appreciate you not only letting me film this sort of a thing, and you remembered me, which is like, oh my god.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so maybe we could just jam to finish the video? Like,
let's do it.
I don't know, what do you want to do?
Let's just jam minor blues or something.
Okay.
What key? A C? Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. in minor.
Now you put me on the spot.
No worries. Alright, good stuff, dude.
Really cool to meet you again.
You too.
I'm going to the masterclass later, of course, so I'll see you there. If you need anything, you know. Okay, so yeah, by the way, of course, like we're recording this, so I gotta say, if everybody is watching this and doesn't own any of Tom's material, you should buy Tom's material. You should follow him on social media because like that's really important. And you should of course subscribe to the channel and follow me on social media. Tom is definitely following me after this, so you gotta follow me as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, Tom again, thank you so very much for doing this.
Nice to see you, dude.
Yeah, cheers, have fun.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Cool.